थैंक यू।
हो गया?
हाँ हो गया।
ये नया गाड़ी कौन सा है, किसका?
सुजुकी का है। हाँ
क्या इसका नाम?
650। हाँ नाम क्या है वो? V-Strom सुजुकी। हाँ
V-Strom ना?
V-Strom हाँ। ओके थैंक यू। Good afternoon YouTube, I'm Oggy F. This is the Suzuki V-Strom 650 XT and I'm going to share my review of it after riding it for close to almost 2000 kilometers now. Welcome to the channel. Now, for those of you who don't know when and how I got this motorcycle for the ride, follow me on Instagram, link in the description and on the screen right now for my username, and you can stay updated about what's really going on because I update stories a lot more than I update videos here on YouTube. The V-Strom is a motorcycle that I got from Anzen Suzuki for this ride, and I'm on my way now to return it at Palm Beach Road. The motorcycle is a 650 V-twin. Power figures are on the screen right now. I don't believe in spec sheets, but I believe more in how the motorcycle runs, and which is why we decided to take this motorcycle along with the Benelli TRK 502X, which is the off-road variant of the 502, both to Nagpur and back. Now let's begin with the riding position, and here's where the V-Strom kind of set itself apart, so to speak, from the other adventure tourers that I've had a chance to ride. The seat height isn't as intimidating as people think it is just by looking at the motorcycle. I'm able to flat foot the motorcycle and I'm 5 feet and 10 inches tall. While it is a heavy motorcycle at 216 kgs, I could be wrong about that figure, it doesn't really feel that way. And I know that sounds cliche, but the weight on this motorcycle sits pretty low, and that works well when you're stuck in city conditions like I am right now and have to move the bike at really low speeds and sometimes walk with it on your tiptoes around. But flat footing is easy, so that's not a problem either. A chunk of its weight, I think, it sits pretty close to where the front of the rider's seat is, somewhere below the tank, and I think that works well both on-road and off-road for this motorcycle, considering how its suspension and ergonomics have been set up. We did hit some bad patches on the way back from Nagpur and got to test the off-road capabilities of this motorcycle. Well, not Ashish Rao Rane type off-road conditions, but off-road by my standards nevertheless. And it performed decently well. While both the TRK and the V-Strom are sold as adventure motorcycles, well, sport adventure motorcycles in this case, the V-Strom is a little more sportier from the two. And the handlebars are situated pretty much in the same position as the TRK is, a little higher probably, but that's probably because the seat is lower than where the seat on the TRK is. And once you take into consideration the distance between the seat and the foot pegs, because there's a really short distance between those two, you start to bend your knee a little more than you otherwise would on one of these adventure motorcycles. And that then becomes a bit of a sporty riding position, considering the foot pegs are slightly further back than they are on the TRK. And while that makes for a great handling motorcycle and allows you to move around a lot, your comfort may be hampered just a little bit because of that. Now, while we're on the topic of comfort, let's talk about the suspension. At the front we have telescopic versus the upside down forks you get on the TRK and most other adventure motorcycles in India. And at the rear you have an adjustable monoshock which works very, very well, and it's adjustable as well, and it's remotely adjustable too with that knob, which makes customizing and tweaking it very, very easy. Let's focus next on the headlights on this motorcycle. Now, I've seen a lot of reviews in India of the V-Strom where people have said that they would have preferred projectors or LEDs and so on and so forth, and that the V-Strom's kind of dated. And while I would agree with the dated bit in the looks department, the way it performs, I don't think it's bad at all. And I don't know how many of those reviews were shot at night also, because I haven't seen any night footage of the V-Strom's lighting. but we were able to test it for a good 8 or 7 hours of darkness between Mumbai and Nagpur, and we were pleasantly surprised with how well it worked. In spite of the weird setup, up and down, the vertical versus horizontal setup that it has up front. While it doesn't really focus on high beam at a certain point, it does increase the spread, and that did help a lot, especially when we were on these narrow roads and had people flashing their high beams directly at us 90% of the time. But as you guys know, that most people who buy adventure motorcycles don't stick with the stock headlights. They either swap the bulbs over or buy additional auxiliary lights to put all over the front and blind other road users. So yeah, I'm guessing people are going to do that with this either way. So if you are disappointed with the stock headlights, well, you always have aftermarket options available. While we're on the topic of lights, so I was surprised that they chose to go with non-LED lights for the indicators. It was a bit weird to do something like that, considering that this bike is 7.5 lakhs ex-showroom, and that's where the V-Strom kind of seemed dated to me. I think in the looks department it's not as edgy and aggressive as some of the other motorcycles out there, but again, looks are a matter of personal preference. I don't think the bike looks bad, but if you compare it side by side with, say, some of the other motorcycles in the same segment, that's where it might start to seem a little tame. But again, depends on your personal preference when it comes to that. The instrument console next. Now, when I saw reviews of this motorcycle on other automotive publication channels and so on and so forth, I noticed that there's a lot of empty space to work with apart from what they've actually used, and I thought that was a little strange, where they could have added more information. But as I got to ride the motorcycle and got familiar with this switch on the left over here, which lets you toggle through the menu, I noticed that there is quite a lot of information available, especially when you compare it to the TRK 502X, which has very, very limited information. The only thing I wish this had was larger text appearing instead of what they've used over there. Because you have the temperature gauge, which was really useful, and by the way, it never really heated up. We'll talk about that later. It has a clock, it has an odometer and 2 trip meters, it has fuel range and a whole lot of other stuff also showing up there. And it all works brilliantly well and at the flick of a button here, so you don't really have to take your hand off the handlebar too to be able to navigate through all of that. The high beam switch is a bit unconventional. I think it's similar to what they use on the CBR 650F, which my friend Brian has, and I had a chance of riding a few times. This has a pass light which then doubles up as a switch to toggle between the two. Next up, let's talk about the brakes, and I think that's the chunk in the armor for this motorcycle mainly. If there was one thing I'd really want to change about this bike, it's the brakes. Everything else works well or is still what the damn. Yeah, if there was one thing I wanted to change about this motorcycle, it would be the brakes. I think they are somewhat wooden in feeling, and for a bike that performs this well everywhere else, it's kind of strange that they didn't manage to do the same thing with the brakes. It does have ABS, it does have twin discs up front and a single disc at the rear. But unlike the GSX-S, which also has a similar setup from Suzuki, this doesn't have the same amount of bite or feel that does. Maybe upgrading the brake pads would be a wise decision. I'm not sure if that would sort out all the problems, but I definitely think an upgrade is in order for that. Another interesting feature that they've added to this motorcycle is this one-touch start. Just like that, the motorcycle cranks up. Similarly, it's also got a low RPM assist, and if you're not familiar with what that is, it's something that they offer on the GSX-S 750 too. Yeah, so the way it works is if you're in a higher gear and the revs are low, the RPM assist will help you rev the engine a little bit so that the motorcycle doesn't stall and you're not embarrassed. And that kicked in quite a few times when you were doing a bit of off-roading for me, so thank you Suzuki, great job with that. While we're talking about the engine, let's also talk about the performance this motorcycle offers. While the power figures aren't something that would really scare you, looking at a 650cc engine, the way it delivers that on the road is what is a sight to be amazed, or a feeling to be amazed by. in first gear and probably even in second gear, I think this can pop a wheelie pretty easily. It also offers a lot of power right up until 7 or 8,000 RPM, after which it starts to calm down, and that's pretty much in every gear. Post 7,000 RPM is where you start to feel a bit of buzziness, but it's hard to call this bike buzzy with how smoothly this engine functions. So yeah, overall I think they've got, if there's one component that stands out from this motorcycle the most, I think it's the engine. And on a highway with an open road, this thing can cruise very easily at 130 and 140. Though the legal speed limit is 80, so keep that in mind, kids. The bike comes with a tank that can accommodate 20 liters of fuel and can take you to a range of about 420 kilometers. We didn't really push it till it reached that stage. I've had bad experiences with motorcycles on long rides like that, but yeah, it did fairly well in terms of fuel economy. I think we just fueled up 3 times on the way to Nagpur, which is about 900 odd kilometers on the route we took. Yep, 22.5 kilometers per liter on that trip, and we've done like what, 1,800 odd kilometers, which is very nice on a 650 twin, which offers this much of power and performance at the same time. It comes with a 12 volt power socket also on the left, so for those of you who want to charge your devices on the go, like us motovloggers, that comes in handy. Now this guy here on my left is wondering, why am I talking to myself? Why is he talking to himself, bro? Why is he talking to himself? Yeah, the bike comes standard with spoked wheels that accommodate tubeless tires, and I don't think there's any other motorcycle at this price point or below it that offers the same in India, at least currently. I know the expensive Tigers offer a similar experience, but you're paying quite a lot for those in comparison to this. Another place where they've done well with this motorcycle is the windscreen. You'd sometimes find very flimsy windscreens on adventure motorcycles, and they start to kind of rattle when you hit higher speeds and don't really provide a lot of protection with the way they're positioned. But this one is very sturdy and works really well with the low setting that it's on currently. You can adjust it using a toolkit, but that's up to you. I think it's fine where it is right now for my height, and never really had a lot of bugs on the visor or on my jacket or gloves and whatnot because of the handguards and the windscreen. They work really well. Pillion comfort is also great. I think when my girlfriend was sitting with me when we went for the American Eagle store launch recently in Mumbai, the bike was very comfortable for her. In fact, she said it was more comfortable than any other bike she sat on with me. And so I think the bike gets the Pillion Prime pillion seat approval. Now, a lot of people make a buying decision not just purely off the on-road price of this motorcycle, but also by the cost of the spares. And I like that about you guys. I'd do that myself if I were you. And that's why I did a little bit of research to get you the cost of certain parts which you would replace more frequently, and the average servicing cost which you can calculate off that. So cost of things like the brake pads, the chain sprocket, the oil filter, air filter, and servicing costs otherwise are on the screen right now, which you can check out and then accordingly decide whether this bike fits into your budget or not. Long term, don't buy it and sell it on OLX then. Alright, that's pretty much it. That's all I had for today. Thank you again so much for watching the video. If you liked it and if you have any questions, do let me know about it by hitting the like button and leaving your questions in the comment section. If you did not, well, at least let me know what you did not like about the motorcycle or about the review, and I'll try and improve in the next one. As always guys, at least wear your helmets while riding your motorcycles, and if you've got an adventure bike, get out there and ride it and be a little adventurous. And ride safe. It's a freaking jungle out there. Goodbye.
Nagpur with a great bag. Came up, you can't hate that. Self-made, you can't take that. Yeah, self-made, you can't make that. Some said I need a record deal, I need a co-sign, I need a Dre track. But all the time I had a